So what's up, guys? Welcome back to Photo Conversations, where we have conversations about photography, film, and so much more about life. Like I told you earlier on that much as what we talk about is photography, creative things, but along the way, I'm looking to host people that have a repository of knowledge, and that knowledge that can easily relate to the work that we do. It might be the law, it might be anything that really supports the creative work that we do. Many of us have had the issue of, especially the photographers and filmmakers, we've had the issue of who owns your photographs? Who owns the right to the photos? Is it the client or you? And we usually get into the issue of, the photos belong to me, the photos belong to you. But today, I have hosted someone that is very interesting, someone that understands the law more than I do. He's a good friend, but he's also an expert in the law. We are happy to have you here. I'm very delighted and I'm very honored to have you here. For me, it's a privilege to have someone that I've seen firsthand, but also someone that I have so much respect for. So you're welcome to Photo Conversations.
I'm very happy to be here.
I have issues when it comes to putting credentials to people's names, but I also know you're not a person of the credentials and who you are, but I think it's very important for us to also acknowledge that you have achieved certain things. So I remember the other day when I called you, and you told me I'm in Geneva, and I'm like, usually when I hear people saying they're in Geneva, they're either doing something to do with human rights. So I was like, man, Geneva. So I don't know whether we can be privy to what you're doing in Geneva. Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing, copyright issues. I was at the headquarters of the World Intellectual Property Organization in Geneva, involved in negotiating a new international copyright treaty, which is the broadcasting treaty. So it's a week-long meeting that we were involved in there.
That is interesting. Yes. So I would like us to start from the very beginning. Like I already said that I've experienced you at a personal level, and one of the things that I remember is you were a person that somehow was within the creative industry, and for that case, I remember your love for music, and for me, it's still hard for me to reconcile lawyer that loves music. So, could that have been one of the things that leads you to this idea of taking on copyright?
In a way, yes. There are very many lawyers who love music, and many who are actually musicians that I look up to. My former partner, who is now a judge in the Court of Appeal, Justice Oscar Kihika, has a studio at home. He has produced music, and he can play pretty much every music instrument out there. One of my closest friends, Silva Chagulani, is a lawyer. He's a musician. No introduction with him. He also has a studio. He does a lot of music, and he's in the legal field. For myself, yes, it starts out in a way. God has interesting ways in which he builds a person. And if I can go back to my high school days, it may be even before then, but I had some friends. There's one called Patrick Nyanzi, Pato. There's another called Eddie. And if you know these people, they started a group called Ngoni. And before they started Ngoni,
they gave us Diggy.
Yes, Diggy, yes. Yeah. Before then, they used to do a lot of music when we were in high school, senior 5, and I would go with them in studio and sing with them.
Okay.
And I mean, I could have gone into that direction, and you see my face on a CD album.
Ideally, we could have had an album from Tony Kakooza.
Yes.
That's an interesting, side of your life as well.
And even then, I didn't even know that I would turn out to be an intellectual property lawyer or copyright lawyer. It's just the love for the music and singing as well. Yes.
Okay. So guys, we might get an a cappella after the show.
I don't know.
So anyway, on a serious note, I was sharing with you before we started this conversation that I was there when you were going to take on this PhD, and I remember that time when they got together and you're talking about the write-up you had to do, and you're rushing, pick up the kids, do this. I remember it was just a few days. Mm-hmm. To me, it seems like yesterday, and yet so much time has passed. And now it's like I've woken up, and Anthony Kakooza is the man at the forefront when it comes to intellectual property and copyright. So maybe could you help us bridge that gap? How do we get there?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, taking a step back, challenge is trying to squeeze everything in a few minutes.
I know.
I love the law. I love God. I love my family. I love the law. And when I finished my undergraduate Bachelor's of Law degree, that was in the year 2000, went through Law Development Center, completed the bar course postgraduate diploma in 2001. Then I went to Warwick University in the UK to do my master's in law. When I was doing that master's, it was a 9-month course, 9 months to 11 months. I wanted to focus on international banking and finance. When I was doing it, we had a whole array of course units, and in the final 3 months is when they tell you that, okay, focus on a main one and write your dissertation on that one that can come out as your specialty for the master's in law. So I was going to do something related to banking, kind of like anti-money laundering. My father then, who is a huge inspirational figure to me, was chairman of the Uganda Law Reform Commission, the late Professor Joseph Kakooza. And we had a chat. He came to visit me and we had a chat, and I was telling him that I want to do my research in banking, and he said, no. One of the next big things is going to be intellectual property law. You focus on intellectual property law, do your master's in that, and see where it takes you. And I started reading up on it. When I did my Bachelor of Laws, we didn't even have intellectual property as a course unit at Makerere back then. Makerere University had only the law school, which he founded back in the 1968. So there was no teaching of intellectual property. So the first exposure I really had to it that was grounding was when I was doing my master's. So I said, okay, let me read on intellectual property. I fell in love with it. And I remember even saying off the cuff that, hey, I may even do a doctorate in this. That was 2003.
Interesting how your own words carry the power.
They carried the power. So I did my master's focusing on international intellectual property law. I did my dissertation on enforcement of intellectual property law in Uganda. Back then, even the laws were very weak. We didn't have the laws we have now. So when I finished, I finished in 2004, graduated in 2005, and I'm back here. So I would say the number one inspiration I had in intellectual property was my father, Professor Kakooza. So in 2005, I remember very well, I was walking in town, I was going to do some shopping somewhere, and a friend of mine called me. He had started his law firm just 2 years back, and he tells me that, why don't you join me and we build this thing? He had a passion for intellectual property and said, why don't you come and join me and we work together? That friend of mine is called Paul Asimwe. And he was running a firm which he still runs today called CP Law Associates. He picked the inspiration from CP Falls. So I joined Paul in 2005, around 2005. And at the same time, I also started working with a non-government organization which was offering pro bono legal aid services called Uganda Christian Lawyers Fraternity. And that's when the walk in that direction started. So from 2005 to 2020, I was with Paul Asimwe. Back and forth, many other things happening along the way. We grew together in the love for intellectual property. We grew together in the practice of that area, did the first consultancies in this area, guiding government on new regulations and things like that. 2009, at that very law firm, and I get a call from some people saying that the president of Uganda, of course, is planning his elections in 2010, and we hear he's going to copyright one of our folklores, Benkoni and the like. What do you say about it? We want to stop him from copyrighting it. That's our folklore. That's our traditional culture expression. I dig into the law, and there's nothing stopping him. And I just put that aside. Meanwhile, I'm working on my application for doctorates, and I get an offer from University of Illinois. in August of 2011, I got to the University of Illinois to start.
Wait, they gave you the offer?
Yes, they gave me an offer. They gave me full tuition, paid for everything. So I go to the US, the University of Illinois. I started my doctorate, and my initial focus was to write my thesis on copyright and electronic commerce. And that's even what got me admitted on the proposal that I wrote.
So still the commerce comes back?
Yes.
You loved your money.
in a way, I was looking at that dimension, that how can we use copyright in electronic commerce.
But when you look at copyright, at the end of the day, it goes back to commerce.
It's about money. It's about you literally looking at that in that sense. But while I'm there, in that first year of reading and panel beating on my research, my supervisors tell me that this is a well-researched area. Why don't you think of something else that you're really passionate about? And then I remember that phone call I had from these people who wanted to stop the president from copywriting. You want another rap.
Actually, I did know that was also something.
Yes.
You know, that's why some of these conversations really should be captured. I mean, I did know that there was that element of, you know, the Mpenkoni folklore and all that, and how you get involved in that.
Right.
So, interesting.
So when I remembered that, I said, hey, why don't I do my doctoral thesis on the intersection between protection of copyright and traditional folklore or traditional cultural expressions, because there's hardly any legislation in that area. Do you look at the individual, like in this case, the president who picked a traditional song and transformed it into a rap song? What about the community where this comes from? Don't they have any ownership?
How do they get paid?
How do you pay a whole community for that matter?
Interesting.
And that's what I built my research on. Everyone at the university got excited about it. They'd never had anything of that area. And I was there for 3 years, from 2011, graduated in 2014, and came out and felt, do I go back to Uganda? I had my whole family with me. My wife was there, my kids were there. My wife was pregnant, gave birth to our last born from the US. So I could have easily settled there. But then I felt, I'm going to be in a crowd. Yes, I've researched on an area that is unique, which is intellectual property and cultural music. But I think I'll be needed more at home. In any case, I had an opening. I was being called back to Uganda Christian University, where I had taught, and I was being offered the deanship of the law school to head the law school. So we packed our bags, came back home in 2014, and settled in Mukono. The first 4 years were more about running the law school. It's
another
crazy work.
It's
a lot of work. I hardly had time to do my private research, but once in a while I would write a few articles in the news.
And for me, I remember you like dashing to the university and dashing to pick the kids.
Yes.
And then it doesn't surprise me that now you've written a book about parenting. And I believe you must be having like a huge experience on how to make things work, life, family, and all that.
No one is an expert. It's always a learning experience. Yes.
Anyway, let's proceed with that. That was just something I brought in based on my memories and how you used to run around and beat jump. I wonder how you even used to beat jump. But anyway.
You get to learn all the shortcuts on Ginger Road. So yes, I mainly focused on running the law school, and I was proud of the achievements made with God's grace during those 4 years, from 2014 when I was dean to 2018 when I handed over the deanship after one term. But like I said, I was writing a few articles in the newspapers. Whenever I would see there's a gap here that hasn't been explored or something people haven't really understood, I would say, hey, the world or Uganda needs to know this. So I'd write a few articles. And I would say those articles helped to get me more noticed out there by the Ugandan IP office, which is Uganda Registration Services Bureau. But more significantly, the World Intellectual Property Organization, which is the national body, rather international body that oversees intellectual property matters. Because when Uganda Registration Services Bureau started calling me in to present or facilitate workshops, some of those workshops were attended by people from the World Intellectual Property Organization. So they picked a keen interest in what I was saying. Sometimes I would relay my findings from my own research from my doctoral project on copyright and cultural expressions. So then they start inviting me for other workshops and projects in other countries. So I started getting involved in Ghana, And then they also tell me, we want to do something for Uganda on protecting its cultural expressions, its traditional knowledge with an intellectual property dimension, and we want you to be the consultant on that. So I ran the project for Uganda, did that well with God's grace. Then I did the same for Malawi, also concluded well. And then now discussions over protecting cultural expressions at the international realm came in with WIPO, World Intellectual Property Organization. So I started going to Geneva to head expert meetings. Yes. So this was something different. I do quite a number of things now with World Intellectual Property.
When you told me in Geneva, I was like,
yes.
Is Anthony Kakooza defending a world level, high level criminal?
Right.
But apparently you're doing that.
Yes.
For me, as you were speaking, I was getting some information. I like how you contextualized, you helped contextualize intellectual property to the African setting. And I mean, that being your PhD, to me, I mean, I would imagine, like, how did you even think about that? When you're going to do either PhD or a master's, you're asked to come up with, something or a thesis, whatever. And then, you write about it and then study that for your time, studying. But how did you even, how did that, was it like something that just came to you, like, the eureka moment, you're like, let me do this? Because it's really, really unique. And I also like the fact that, you talked about how, these are two things. That's the first one. The second one is, I like how you go to the US, study, and then say, I'm coming back here. Was it sort of, did you feel like a sense of purpose, coming and applying that? Did it have a spiritual aspect to it? Did you get this from, I don't know, maybe you could help expound on that?
Okay. I would say it was both easy and hard. Easy in the sense that, as they always say, home is best in every setting. I mean, you're out there, of course, clean roads and all those kinds of things. Opportunities, there are always huge opportunities. They say the US is the land of opportunity. And I saw that even for myself, for my wife, for my kids. We're all in school. My wife had the opportunity to do her master's as I was doing my doctorate. My kids were in school. So things
you didn't want to live the American dream in America.
It's not that. It's not like I didn't want to live it. I just felt, let me go back home. Let me go back home because I was in an area of intellectual property, and intellectual property is one of the US's biggest cash cows. I always say, because now I'm as an academician, I always tell my students that the top 3 exports out of the US are all intellectual property. The IT industry is intellectual property. The music industry is intellectual property. The movie industry. And those are the top 3 exports out there. Forget every other thing that they export. But that's why they really want to grab a hold of it. So
your relevance there was really automatic.
I would be 1 in a million out there that doesn't stand out. Whenever you're in any kind of setup, you have to think of, how do I get to stand out? And it wouldn't have been easy for me to stand out in a place where there are a multitude of intellectual property lawyers. Leave alone the fact that the area that I was researching on was traditional knowledge, which they hardly know much about. I felt that I would have struggled to fit in. Yes, I would have fit in eventually, but it would have taken some time. Whereas I had an already open opportunity. Come back, lead the law school. The first years were not that easy because I was purely in academics.
Are you still at the law school?
So yes, I'm still at Uganda Christian University, but as a part-timer. Because in 2018, when my deanship ended, I got an offer to join Cornell Law School in New York. Cornell Law School is one of the Ivy League, one of the top law schools. So yet again, another opportunity shows up. Come and stay here with family. So, but I went there as an individual, as a visiting professor. I taught for 1 semester for about 5-6 months. And again, I got that feeling that no, home is best. So I come back. So that's 2019. And between the transition of 2019 to 2020, the COVID period, I now get an offer to leave. And all the time I had been teaching, but also practicing part-time with CP Law Associates, which was Paula Simwe's firm. So I get a call to join two interesting institutions. One, the law firm of Biencha Kihika and Company, which is quite one of the oldest law firms in the country. It's a commercial law firm. And then also to join Makerere University School of Law. So in joining Makerere University, I was going to be joining at the rank of doctor. That's for lecturer. At Uganda Christian University, which I had been teaching at since 2003, I'd climbed all the way up to associate professor. So in joining Makerere, then I have to leave full-time UCU and become a part-timer there, still recognized as professor, and then go to Makerere, where I'm at a lower rank, called doctor.
So as we are having this conversation, going forward, I'm going to address you as professor.
No, the titles go with what we do, but I don't think they are us. What I am
the titles don't go
Tony.
before you as a person.
Not as a person. And people get abused by their titles in the sense that they get over them. So I always tell people, I am Tony. The title is what I do.
Okay, let's shift gears here. Your journey to become an expert in intellectual property is very inspirational, and I believe, to be honest, to be fair, we will have another podcast for that where we just focus on your experiences, because I believe there's a lot to learn in how you make your decisions and say, no, this is blissful, but I'd rather go back home and make it change. I would rather go and build. These people have already built theirs. Let me go back home and build what is at home. And for me, that is inspirational. So, like I said, let's shift gears now. Most Ugandan creatives, music, artists, photographers, writers, will talk about ownership of their work of art. But I can guarantee you that most of them do not understand the in and outs, the nuances, the intricacies of intellectual property and copyright. Intellectual property is less used. Usually you'll hear "Mwana nina copyright yange," copyright is usually. So myself, I would say
they misuse the words copyright and patent and all that.
I did a little bit of law as a course unit in my bachelor's degree, but I cannot affirm that I understand copyright law, and yet it's where I operate. I'm doing photography, I'm doing music, I'm doing videos, and now as the world grows, as the industry grows, it's even becoming a lot more complicated. So this section of this conversation, I would say, can you please take us through intellectual property or copyright, and make it simple,
right,
for that musician down there, trying to do music in his small studio.
Okay, so basically, there's intellectual property, and then there's intellectual property rights. Intellectual property is simply the creativity of the mind. Anything that you sit down at and say, let me create something, that is intellectual property. That you, as Ambrose has said, let me create this, let's say, for instance, people are not being heard. When a person talks, sitting across the room, I can't hear that person. And then Ambrose says, let me create something that I'll call a microphone. And then you tease around a few things, mix a few wires, and you bring out this object and say, this is called a microphone. I've created it to enhance someone's voice. That is intellectual property. And it's given a unique name called patent when it comes to how you protect the invention behind this microphone.
Patent is what protects.
The technical solution to a problem is a patent.
Okay.
So technical solution to a problem is given the name of a patent. But if I say what I've created is, yes, new, but anyone could have thought about it, but it's industrially applicable, that will not be called a patent. It will be called a utility model. So I can still have a microphone that will not be a patent, but it will be called utility model. That's the second type of intellectual property right. The third type is when you say, people stand all the time. Let me create a new type of seat that they'll look at and sit on and enjoy the comfort of the seat. Just strolling and you feel very comfortable. I like the design of it. There's what they call industrial design protection. That's a third type of intellectual property. The way this chair is designed. Why would I buy this chair as opposed to another chair? It's because of the design. So I could actually
own a design.
Yes. You can design, you can sit down, pick a paper, sketch something and sketch out a unique design of a chair.
And I said, this is mine.
You're creating, out of your mind, you're creating something, but because of the way it is sketched, it's the industrial design that is called the intellectual property rights. Then so I've given you 3 so far. The fourth one will be, I run a business, I run a studio, I want to market my studio. Let me create a logo that I'll put at the door or at the roadside as a billboard, on the letterhead, that whenever I talk about Ambrose Studio, there's this logo. That everyone sees that logo, they know, oh, this is Ambrose's studio. Let me call that a trademark. So the trademark is another type of intellectual property. That you look at that logo and you associate it to the services that Ambrose sells. Then I'll end with copyright. Then you have what they call a plant variety. That you see that people are starving because there are certain pests that eat up their crops. Or it gets too hot every February and March that their tomatoes just dry up. Let me get a tomato from Kavale, mix its stem with a tomato from Gulu, and using my scientific understanding, which is again creativity of the mind, I come up with a unique type of tomato, give it a plant variety name, whatever name, so that it can withstand pests and it can withstand heat from the sun. As long as it has what we call uniform growth, that it is stable and it is new, I give it plant variety protection. So that is another type of intellectual property. Then another one, you say, we have these unique cows from Western Uganda. They're longhorned. Their meat tastes differently from any other cow in the world. Their milk tastes differently. You will never find that kind of taste of milk. You will never find that kind of taste of meat. You can only find them in the Ankole region. Let's give that a geographical indication protection. So that's another type of intellectual property, which is called the geographical indication protection. Then you get down to copyright. With copyright, I'm writing a book. As long as I put my ideas on paper, or as long as I get my phone and a song comes to mind, the creativity, and I mix these lullabies together and I record on my phone or I record on some gadget, in as long as anything I'm expressing is either put on paper, in a book, or recorded in some medium, the protection given to that expression is what they call copyright. So copyright protects literary works, that is what you write, dramatic works, that is plays, videos, and the like, or artistic works, photography, visual arts, fine art, those fall in the category of copyright. But what stands as copyright is anything you express into a fixed form, not simply standing there and singing openly.
Okay, now, yes. I like how you've categorized the different forms of copyright or intellectual property. It's interesting when you talk about, the things we own, and I'm like, maybe this is how God actually owns us. He has, and maybe his patent is the DNA, I mean, if you look at it from that point of view, it's a lot to grasp.
Yes.
And I think that's why some people go and study law, and some of us go and do music. It's a lot to grasp, and clearly your categorization shows that literally every field of work has intellectual property.
That's true. The shirt you're wearing, the trousers you're wearing, the seat you're seated on, and yet, is all intellectual property.
In Africa, we ignore.
That's true.
And sometimes it's not intentional, but it's
the lack of awareness.
The lack of awareness about what we can own and how much this can do for us in terms of changing our lives. And coming to to the point of, changing our lives, I'd ask the question then, how do we the creatives, the photographers, the filmmakers, the farmer who has invented a certain, method, how do we then use this intellectual property to make our lives better? Because there are people that have invented stuff that has changed the world and have not been rewarded for their effort, for their creativity. I see this all the time in my field of work, which is photography and filming. I've worked with organizations that will tell you that, do for us maybe a number of photographs. They don't tell you what they're going to use the photographs for. They say, we paid you. But then next time you're finding your photograph being used at the airport, and they're saying maybe Africa something, maybe African safaris or whatever, but it's in Heathrow, Then how do we start? Because I have to acknowledge that we have a long way to go.
Right.
Because just explaining those categories gets my mind a little bit, you're churning my mind.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, where do we start from? We've already lost because if we're to start to reclaim our properties, our copyright, that would be a long story because so much has already been lost. Then how do we? What would be the starting point for that creative right now? How do we get started at applying this in the work that we do?
So there's capacity development. It's always about a lack of awareness. What does the law say? The Ugandan copyright law, which has been around since the 1950s, and then it was changed to 2006. So
wait a minute. We had a copyright law.
We've had a copyright law since 1958. It was very weak. It didn't say much. That was the one we inherited from Britain as our colonial masters. In 2006, we came up with a much better copyright law, and that's the one we still have today, which is currently being debated, I think, in Parliament. Before at least the end of this year, there will be quite a number of amendments which have been involved in. So under that current 2006 legislation, it talks about commissioned works or paid for works. Someone walks into your studio and says, I'm going to pay you such and such an amount. Here's a contract that says, I pay you 5, 10 million or whatever amount. Whatever work you do will be owned by me. They may not say it that way, but that's the position, that they'll own all the photographs. You're using your expertise. It doesn't matter.
The one who commissions
owns the copyright.
Okay.
But what people need to understand is a difference between an author and an owner. And the law is also, the copyright law is quite clear on that.
Does that mean I could be an author, but I'm not the owner?
Exactly. You remain the author of the photograph. I remain the author of the book I've written, but I'm not the owner of the copyright. So the person who has paid for it can use your photograph wherever they want. You can find it in Heathrow, Gatwick, whichever airports. They'll say that's Ambrose's photo, but they don't have to give any money to you because you got your first money and you walked away. And that's the way it is. The other side of it is you may say, yes, you pay me, but I'll retain the copyright ownership in this. So the parties would need to agree on that.
So just a moment. Does that mean that the current law is inadequate?
It's not inadequate. That's the position in every common law country, that the parties agree. It's in the agreement between the parties that either I receive the money and surrender copyright to you, or again, we'll agree that I'll receive the money but still retain copyright in the works, that you will take the photographs, but they'll still be my photographs. I can always take back or control how those photographs are used or any other type of copyright. It falls in different brackets. We're only talking about photography here, but there's also fine art. A fine artist who produces works and is paid by government can still control how those works are used, even if his payment has been received. It has a phrase called droit dessus. It's a French phrase.
Droit dessus.
Droit dessus, in the sense that that person can still control any public auction of the works, that in as long as his works he already got payment, but then you proceed to publicly auction his painting, some of that money should still go to him.
Okay.
So those are some of the other exceptions. So,
but if they're not expressly
exactly, if it's
put
not
down in a,
if it's not in a contract, that's why the current stipulation in the law is saying subject to contract. Those are the words in the act. Subject to contract, copyright will be owned by the one who pays.
But I will share this with you. For the time that you've seen me start work till today, for the time that I've worked in the industry of photography, filming, and basically creative work, there is no single assignment that I have been party to creating a contract.
They always do the contract.
Usually they do the contract and hand it to you. And they tell you read through and sign, and we countersign, and things like that.
Yes.
And for me, I've always told my fellow creatives that the power dynamic kind of favors
the one who's
the client.
Yes.
And yet you have the right to say, no, wait. We need to sit down, consider the facts, and then come up with a contract so they usually give us templates that work for them, that have been figured out by their lawyers for, a couple of years. So that is the state.
You've used the word economic dimension because that's the way it is. They will give it to you, and if you say, no, let's change this, they may say, okay, we can't agree on that. They walk away and look for the next studio. So they manipulate the system for you to feel that if I say no, they'll just take the deal elsewhere, and I need this deal. That's always the way people feel.
But you see, of course, for me